As you've probably heard by now, J.K. Rowling has committed the unpardonable sin. Earlier this month, the world-renowned author of the Harry Potter series responded to a headline by implying that people who menstruate are, wait for it, women. From the cast of the Harry Potter franchise to an entity of the United Nations, the disavowals, denunciations, and diatribes came pouring in. Her statement was labeled transphobic and denying the dignity and identity of transgender persons. Some fans even claim that she ruined the once beloved books and must now imagine a world without her. And just like that, J.K. Rowling was canceled. Her unpardonable sin? She was a TERF. A TERF, or trans-exclusionary radical feminist, is a pejorative term, meaning that the feminist movement for women's equality does not have room for transgender persons. Now, not all feminists are radical, and not all feminists are trans-exclusionary. A radical feminist aims at complete revolution and believes that society should be entirely changed and restructured. It questions why women should adhere to certain roles and behaviors based on their biology. That's important. And it's also one of the many varieties of feminism: cultural feminism, moderate feminism, socialist feminism, womanist feminism, mystical, postmodern, ecological. That's always a fun one. J.K. Rowling may not actually be a radical feminist, but that's irrelevant. The TERF epithet applies nonetheless. Also, not all feminists are trans-exclusionary. Many see transgenderism as another step toward rejecting socially dominant stereotypes and achieving gender equality. A TERF, however, diverges from mainstream feminism and does not recognize a trans woman, which is a biological male who identifies as a woman, to be an actual woman, but instead insists that one's biology determines or at least indicates one's gender. Now, why would an otherwise socially progressive, politically liberal woman reject the idea that trans women are indeed women? To understand that, we've got to go back a few decades. The earliest days of American feminism focused on overturning legal inequities that prevented women from social equality because they were female. Fast forward to the 1960s and 70s, and a different brand of feminism advocated for, among other issues, the Equal Rights Amendment. If you've seen the series Mrs. America on Hulu, you're already familiar with that history. The wording of the ERA prevented discrimination on account of sex, not gender, which refers to one's sense of maleness or femaleness, but sex, which refers to one's biology. See, one of feminism's initial goals was to disentangle or liberate women from gendered behaviors that reflected the preferences of men, like wearing high heels and bras and makeup and skirts and hairstyles and tone of voice and choice of words and all these interpersonal dynamics. All of them represented a woman's gendered socialization, and all of them fit under this umbrella of gender expression. So what the bygone days of feminism did, among other things, was rebuff the idea that being a woman meant conforming to a gender stereotype. Instead, women should be able to present themselves to the world however they chose, entirely free from the cultural expectations of gender expression. Enter transgenderism. Transgenderism maintains that one's sex, biology, and gender, self-expression, do not necessarily correspond. Consequently, a biological male who believes himself to be a woman and adopts the gender expression and behaviors of a woman is considered a trans woman. So now, the very cultural gender expressions that feminist ideology claimed were irrelevant to a woman's identity, transgender ideology claims is indispensable to a woman's identity. In her book, Gender Hurts, Sheila Jeffreys contends that transgenderism is actually hurting women because it's giving credibility to outdated ideas of the differences between men and women. Here's what she says. Transgenderism depends for its very existence on the idea that there is an essence of gender, a psychology and pattern of behavior which is suited to persons with particular bodies and identities. This is the opposite of the feminist view, Jeffreys says, which is the idea that gender is the foundation of the political system of male domination. Now, for context, Jeffreys is hardly a conservative. She's a lesbian radical feminist. And her main point of contention here is that someone who's born male cannot identify with the oppression and discrimination that women have endured as a political class. By the way, if you take that away, You no longer have ideological feminism at all. The entire worldview hinges on this belief that women are an oppressed social class by virtue of the fact that they were born female. Not that they have the feminine gender, but born female. Janice Raymond wrote in her book, The Transsexual Empire, that a surgery could give someone the outward and inward female organs, but it can't confer the history of being born a woman in this society. And herein is what it means to be a TERF. According to transgenderism, however, a man can now determine and delineate what it means to be a woman, and he expresses it according to how she looks, what she wears, how she acts. So to accept that womanhood is a self-determined identity reduces the core of womanhood to a set of attitudes or behaviors. So don't miss this. The same gender equality arguments that sought to liberate women from male definitions of femininity are now being used to defend a male's liberty to define what is and what is not feminine. The irony is that feminism has actually come full circle, and not even a woman's identity as a woman belongs to women. Now, the bigger issue here is that women were never autonomously free to define what it means to be a woman, and neither are men for that matter, but that's for another day. The JKRowling kerfuffle reveals how insisting that a man cannot be a woman and vice versa isn't just regarded as intolerant. It's considered a personal violation of and threat to a transgender person's identity. That's definitely also for another day. In Rowling's response to the public backlash, the Harry Potter author called for open-mindedness and understanding for women whose sole crime was wanting their concerns to be heard without receiving threats and abuse. Sadly, that kind of freedom of thought is becoming more and more of a fantasy.